Good afternoon and welcome to our political pass at Newsline Media. I'm your host Akiro Nakotong. And today our main focus will be on the Mount Kenya region, a powerhouse that will shape the 2027 election with Rigathi Gachagua, ex-deputy president, being the center of attention, and ex-president Uhuru Kenyatta still having relevance in the region. So joining us is political analysis and commentator, Mr.
Thank you. My name is Albert Kasembeli.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Albert Kasembeli, thank you for joining us. Let's begin with the big question. How do you see the influence of Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and former President Uhuru Kenyatta shaping Mount Kenya politics ahead in 2027?
The first thing we must appreciate is that Mount Kenya region is going to be pivotal in the 2027 elections, just as it was during the 2022 elections. And of importance to note is the two people you've mentioned. You have talked about Rigathi Gachagua, former deputy president, and Uhuru Kenyatta, the former president. It is important to note that two of them in 2027 will still be competing for space at the political arena. One, Gachagua wants to remain the dominant figure that will make the decisions in the Mount Kenya region, as he did when he was the marksman for the current president Uhuru Kenyatta during the electioneering period running up to the 2022 elections. And one thing that we must appreciate is that the dynamics of the 2022 elections are going to be very different from the dynamics of the 2027 elections. One is a president who is seeking to reclaim a second term, as opposed to the 2022 election when William Ruto was making the first bid for it. One, in this election, Rigathi Gachagua wants to maintain his position as the kingpin of the region, as he did in 2022. He has, even after being impeached, he has maintained that clarion call for one man, one vote, in terms of as his principle and theory in terms of equal resources, sharing of the national resources in the region. Two, 2027 comes in the background of at a time when the current president, Ruto, has lost clout in Mount Kenya region. So the question will be, is he going to reclaim it? And remember, Mount Kenya again becomes more important in whether he will get the second term or not. We are aware that Mount Kenya gave him almost 4 million votes. Now, without 4 million votes, how will the president be able to make up for that in other regions of the country? But now, let's get back to the point. The point you said is, what is the role of the two in terms of the succession and the Mount Kenya politics? One thing we must appreciate is that Rigathi Gachagua, in as much as he is emerging after his impeachment as the flagship or the image of the opposition, overall opposition in the country, he has received a lot of dent in the region. One of the issues that he has to contend with is the fact that he has lost clout as a deputy president. Two, he's now taking over a position that technically, as an impeached vice president, he has no, technically he may not be allowed to contest in the general election unless the cases pending before the court are settled in his favor. Otherwise, he will never be running as a presidential candidate. Two, he may only assume the position of a kingmaker. A kingmaker in Mount Kenya. Does Mount Kenya need a kingmaker in the next election? No. We have had diverging views from Mount Kenya region where they are talking about, does Mount Kenya have to produce a presidential candidate this time around again? But now, political scientists will tell you, they run the risk, if they push, they run the risk of getting the lashback from what we call majoritarian political scheming. The other day we had Kioni, who is trying to come up. Kioni belongs to Jubilee Party, the party that is anchored on the former president Uhuru Kenyatta. We have seen Kiunjuri coming up and pushing for the candidature of Matiang'i. Matiang'i has not said which party he will contest on, but Kiunjuri Kioni has insisted that Matiang'i will be the candidate for Jubilee. Now that, if you look at it holistically, it will serve to dent the unity of Mount Kenya region. We already have the former president who is already enjoying who enjoys the crown of a former president. He's not just the former president, he's also the son of a former the founding father of this country. And with that title goes with a lot of privileges. Today, many politicians in Mount Kenya region are saying, we wish we had listened to what Uhuru told us. Today, Uhuru is emerging as a prophet. Will they trust him again this time if he gives them direction? We are yet to see. Because they normally say, once bitten, twice shy. Will the Mount Kenya region look at this man who has now been given a position of a prophet? Will they look at his word as gospel truth and go by what he says? And if he has to go by, if they have to do that, and the candidate for Jubilee is Matiang'i, where does Gachagua remain now in that political matrix?
Okay, so we will emphasize on Gachagua. We have all witnessed when Gachagua was in power as the deputy vice president. Never in his life has he opposed the president, and never in his life has he condemned the current the current government of their bad acts. The moment he was impeached is when he started talking about the situations in the current government. So, do you think Gachagua is acting as a bitter ex just because he was impeached? He now wants to get back to President Ruto Kenyatta by following the clout and using Gen Zs as a get back to President Ruto?
I would say yes, and I would also say no. I would say yes because naturally, put in that position of Gachagua, anybody would be bitter with the current government. And you would use any opportunity to lash back at the government. But again, look at the traditional Kenyan politician. Scan your eyes beyond Gachagua and look at the manner in which our politicians operate and behave. I normally say our politicians have an orientation of bad manners because they are never guided by principle or any policy. What guides most of our politicians is their selfish interest. What Gen Zs call they are tumbocrats because they go by what serves their interest. That being the case, would we then, as you suggest, would we then look at Gachagua as taking advantage of Gen Zs? I would think that is a narrative that is being created by the government. One, When the agencies took to the streets, Gachagua was still the vice president. He had not been impeached, and he had never talked about the ills or the economic woes the Kenyans are going through. So now, the fact that he appears to be speaking the same language like the agencies, I would think it is giving him a lot of leeway by imagining that he can control the agencies. The manner in which the agencies have operated is such that they have wanted to operate without any political party, without regionalism in them, saying this is the Mount Kenya, this is the coast, this is the western. They say them they are partyless, they are tribeless, and today they have lived up to that. I have no belief that Gachagua is controlling the agencies, and I have never seen any, except a narrative that has been created by the government.
Okay, so still on Gachagua. So if we give Gachagua, presidency in 2027, just by the way, do you think that Gachagua will change his ways? Being a tribalist man, like he's so tribalist that he talks trash about other people and focuses on only the Mount Kenyan people. Do you think that he will view Kenyans as equal and not differentiate them on trades?
You are saying that we come up with a scenario where he is the president,
yeah.
And we want to look at him as a tribalist, the man who speaks for the mountain. I would think we would be judging Gachagua too cruel. Gachagua is only speaking what other politicians do in this country without talking. Give me any scenario. Look at the current cabinet. Look at the appointments in the current government. Parastatal heads. Look at the permanent secretaries. Look at the presidential appointments. Wouldn't you see that the president leans towards his community?
No, but like he hasn't shown it.
What is the difference between not saying what you are doing and demanding for what you think is your right? After all, Gachagua told us when they went to the polls in 2022, they had an agreement on which region gets what. And Gachagua says he was only demanding what was on paper. So, are we imagining that arrangement is tribal or criminal?
Yeah, because like what we don't know would hurt us. Because like the president haven't told the public what they have agreed in private. So other leaders from different countries have not demanded what's there, but Gachagua has has bring it upon himself to demand what Mount Kenyan regions want. And like not only that, he always talk bad about maybe the Luo people during demonstration, and that he will deal with them personally and all that. So he has shown since he went to the government that he's tribalist and all that.
When Gachagua talked about the last year's demonstrations of the agencies when they were planning, I remember he went to his office at around 5:30 in the morning. And he declared that he's ready to face the opposition, the demonstrators, and he said he will deal with them ruthlessly. The president never woke up at any given time to say he is not in tandem with what Gachagua was saying. Naturally, that gives us an impression that Gachagua was speaking what his boss had given him. And remember, when the president is absent, the deputy president assumes that office temporarily. Can I give you the scenario of Trump, for example? Many whites in the US hate black immigrants, but majority of them have no guts to say that they should leave. Would you make, who is more evil, Donald Trump or the Ku Klux Klan? The Ku Klux Klan moves and kills the blacks on the streets. Donald Trump says, please, your invitation is overdue. Can you pack and go? But he is expressing what many. Can we look at now, let me give you the example of Musalia Mudavadi and Moses Wetangula, the president, the speaker. Today, they have lost clout in Western Province because in the agreement, Western Province was supposed to get 30% of the government. They are getting the political hit because they have not been able to demand for the 30% that belong to them. Gachagua stood and said, this is ours. And we did this. We gave you this number of votes and this is what we demand. The idea that Gachagua is a tribalist is a narrative that has been created by the opponents to put him in bad light. Let me ask you a simple question among the Kenyan politicians. You know you know Oscar Sudi? You know the MP for Kikuyu?
Yeah.
Chungwa? You know Gachagua? Who amongst them would pass for a tribalist?
I guess one of them. Gachagua leading, then Oscar Sudi.
In your view. But I want to be very, very open and speak the truth. Gachagua was sober enough to demand that this is what our people deserve. Ichungwa was never courageous enough to demand something, but he took a bigger chunk of the national cake to do roads in his constituency. Aren't just politicians in Kenya the same? It's just a matter of a kettle calling a pot black. Because they are all in manner and in the way they do, they're just tribalists or regionalists, or if we want to call it party stalwarts, because they would want this to go to their party, they would want this to go to their clan, they would want this to go to their people. But essentially, Gachagua is no new breed of politician. It's just the same old Kenyan politician. So I think when we judge him as a tribalist, we are just playing into the narrative that has been created by the opponents to look at him as a tribalist, when what they are doing is exactly what Gachagua is saying. The only difference is that Gachagua can demand for it publicly.
Do you think the polarization of political parties in the mountain, from UDA to Jubilee, remnants to new outfits like DCP, might lead to low voter turnout in 2027?
I believe it will have a bigger role on either a high turnout or poor turnout. One thing that we must appreciate is that Kenyans, deep inside a Kenyan, is a tribalist, is a regionalist, is a party stalwart. Can you imagine a scenario where, regardless political party does not have a presidential candidate, do you expect the turnout to be as high as if they had their own as a presidential candidate? No. Look at it this way. Supposing Jubilee, as Kioni is touting, had Matiang'i as a presidential candidate, it will have an impact in the voter turnout. But in general, what happens in a region that is fragmented politically by many political parties is that authenticism among the electorates is never there. And it eventually works against high voter turnout. And I expect, yes, if you ask me whether it will, yes, it will. Uhuru Kenyatta.
Yeah.
Uhuru Kenyatta has a very big role to play in the 2027, in the run-up to 2027 election. Not just necessarily in the Mount Kenya region, but across the country. Remember, this is a former president whom people are making comparisons in terms of service delivery and performance, matters of governance when he was in office and after his office. People are making comparisons. Today, the Mount Kenya people are saying, I wish we had listened to our son. What does that tell you? It tells you that they still look at him as an opinion leader. And as to whether it may make a big difference nationally, it is for me and you to guess. I do not think Uhuru Kenyatta can make a big impact in the politics of this country. I believe the biggest factor that is going to determine the direction of the 2022 general election is the Gen Z factor. Believe me, you ignore Gen Zs at your own peril. If they can take IDs and register in large numbers, they will have a decision on who becomes who in the politics of this country in 2027.
Gachagua has hinted at the formation of the DCP, the Democratic Congress Party, as a new regional outfit. In your opinion, could DCP become the next UDA for Mount Kenya?
Yes, definitely it will. Look at it this way. In Mount Kenya, if you aspire to have an elective office and you are not in Gachagua's political outfit, or you are not in a political party that is coalescing in his coalition, then you are done.
So, back to our former president, do you think President Ruto will still have a chance in the 2027 elections, being the president of Kenya?
You know, in Kenya, or in any political arena, 2 years is quite a long period of time. And I can tell you one thing. If the people around President Ruto were to listen to what the Kenyans are talking about, the grievances of the Gen Zs, and respond to them positively, it could have an impact. But the manner in which the president operates, he operates as if he has come from Jupiter. He's just landed in Kenya, he doesn't even know what people are talking about. Kenyans are, in fact, what the Gen Zs are demanding are very doable. Stop abductions. The cost of living is too much for the Kenyans. Certain tax measures are taking the country's economy to the drain. The president can never listen. You know, our president operates as a know-it-all. Demonstrators are being killed and he does not give a qualm about it. He even orders where they should be shot. As if you're shot in the leg, you can never die. Rex Masai was the first demonstrator to die and he was shot in the leg. So when you tell police officers to shoot in the leg, it means you do not even mind about what Kenyans are complaining about. The issues of extrajudicial killings is a big issue in this country. It may not have started with Ruto, but he promised during the election that that shall never happen in this country under his watch. And yet it is even getting worse. So yes, does Ruto have a chance? He has a chance to fight if he mends his ways and listens to what the Kenyans are demanding. But if he takes the kind of trajectory he has taken, I can tell you he cannot. He has no chance. He has no chance.
And with the way the president is moving and how he orders things, do you think that the country have an higher chance of having a dictator like our neighboring countries? like Ruto being a dictator and not wanting, even if he loses the votes, but still stay in as the president in power.
Do you say Ruto is not a dictator or what?
He is, but like, will he now be like Museveni and other presidents like Salva Kiir? Do you think he will take that path? Because we have seen in different occasions he interacts with this president most of the times.
I can tell you, President Ruto is a student of Museveni.
Mm-hmm.
He's a student of Museveni's leadership. And more often, even before he won the last election, you remember he was doing acts of disappearance, then he surfaces somewhere on a bench with Museveni somewhere seated. What they were discussing, we don't know.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, he is a typical student of Museveni's politics. If Ruto takes another second term, you can take it to the bank that the next thing he will be, or the people around him will be struggling to do, is to change the constitution to remove the term limit, like Museveni. Remember, when one gets to power and stays and overstays there, they even get what we call, they feel they are entitled to that office, and they believe that seat belongs to them.
Mm-hmm.
And they believe the country is their property and they can do anything in the manner in which they want. So the only thing that this country has saved this country is our constitution, which you cannot compare our constitution with the constitutions of our neighbors. None of these neighboring countries has a constitution that allows for demonstrations. None of these neighboring countries have a constitution that allows for free speech. In some countries, in some of our neighbors, I happened to have worked as a media consultant in one of our neighboring countries. And I remember one day we were in a meeting and one person asked, you have a background of being a Kenyan, and what you're telling us cannot work here. Then somebody told me, how about remember, you have the freedom to say what you want to say, but you may not have that liberty after you have said it. You are very free to say what you want to say, but you may not be free after you have said it. That is the true story about our neighbors. So the only thing that saves Kenyans, even why the agencies can be on the streets, why demonstrators can be on the streets, is our constitution that makes it legit. And in these other countries, it is not legit. So yes, we have a dictator who is struggling hard to be a dictator because he has to work against the constitution that does not allow dictatorship. As opposed to you remember before this constitution came to play, we had a constitution that allowed, if the president just looks at your face and he decides you are not as handsome or as beautiful and he thinks you should be in jail, he will just tell the Minister for Internal Security, you are taken to jail, and he says, I've detained you. And he does not have to explain to anybody why he has put you in. And that was legal. But today, it is not. We have our courts that are able to stand for that. We have the civil society that is very strong and powerful in Kenya that is mitigating some of those things. And that is why you see the president is mad when he sees civil society telling him this is not correct. When the agencies tell him this is not correct. If it were not for the constitution, I don't think the story would be the same. It would be different.
Thank you so much, Mr. Albert. There you have it. Mount Kenya stands at a political crossroads with big names and bigger questions ahead of the 2027 election. Will the mountain unite or fragment further? Only time will tell. I'm your host, Akiro Nakoto. Stay tuned.